Well, hello again. Welcome to another
Hello.
session of the 18th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment Virtual Conference. I'm Bob Ailes. I'm your moderator. We have with us for this session Lena Pinkston and Karen Edwards. Lena is a clinical instructor and internship director in the Department of Retailing at the University of South Carolina's College of Human Resources, and what's HRSM?
Hospitality, retail, and sport management.
Of course, I should have done that. Okay. Uh, she's been in higher ed for over 15 years and dedicated to fostering student success and advancing experiential learning. We also have Karen Edwards, who's the Associate Dean of Academic Programs and Student Affairs. And in her free time, she's also a senior instructor in the Department of Retailing at USC. Uh, an award-winning educator and Fulbright specialist. Wow. Hey, we are honored to have both of you with us today. So let me throw it over to you, to Lena and Karen. All yours.
All righty. Thank you so much. We really
Thank you,
appreciate
Bob.
it, Bob, and we're delighted to be here. And so thank you to our participants and whoever might be watching this recording a little bit after the fact. You likely already know that under the new rule that falls under the Americans with Disability Act, most colleges' web content has to comply with accessibility rules. Not everybody has clued into the fact that this rule also covers course content that we transmit digitally to our students. And so that's really what we're looking at today. And so, Lena, if you'd give me a click. By the end of this session, we're hoping that you're going to be able to explain why you should make or why course materials should be accessible for our students. You should also be able to locate some resources to help you make course materials accessible or to help you help others, depending on your role. You should be able to identify inaccessible course materials and work toward making your team's course materials accessible by the deadline, which is April 24th of this year. And one thing I do want to point out is continuous improvement is the name of the game. So even though we've got this goal of all materials being accessible by April 24th, we want to continue to consistently make our products or digital materials accessible for students and for everyone, and to use universal design techniques to continuously make things better. So let's have a show of hands. You can use a little reaction button or put in the chat either a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on how confident you are in your ability to create fully accessible digital online materials for your students. Let's see what we got in the chat box or with the reaction buttons. Thumbs up, or we've got some, oh, wow, we've got lots of
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yay. We see them. Yay. All right. So hopefully then this presentation will be a refresher for you, and we're going to share materials with you, including these slides that you can use, or a portion of these slides that you can use to share with your faculty and instructors so that they can make their digital content accessible. So quick review. WCAG is a set of guidelines and standards that were developed basically by industry professionals. And for a long time, as you know, we haven't had any specific rule that says, all right, you've got to have your course content, your website accessible, but the Department of Justice has not given us specifics on what that meant until now. Now, what they have done is they've said, hey, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, you've got access to the WCAG industry best practices. We're going to go ahead and say that if you meet the lowest level, the 2.1 AA standards, we're going to call that accessible. And so that's the standard that's now been adopted for institutions of higher ed. And so depending on the size and the type of your institution, your deadline might be this year or it might be next year. And so we're aiming for the level 2.1 guidelines, which were implemented and adopted by uh, experts in the field. And now the Department of Justice has said, okay, this is what you need to meet. So what does this mean to you? Let's talk about the who, what, where, when, how. So for most of us, Lena and I are at the University of South Carolina. We're a large flagship institution. The rule is applying to us sooner than later, but that's okay. The Department of Justice has promulgated as a rule under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act that we must meet the standards of WCAG in order to be accessible. And that has to be upfront, which requires a bit of a culture shift. Instead of responding to student requests, which we will continue always to do, but we need to make sure our digital content upfront is accessible for students, even if they haven't asked for it. So this applies to public institutions, and depending on your size, again, the deadline date might be a bit different. But in fact, we're going to give you some pointers on how to make that happen. All right, so why is it important? It's important for our students. For students with visual impairments who use screen readers, for example, maybe due to blindness, low vision, or what have you. We've got to make sure our content that we post for our students is readable by that screen reader. And so there are certain things that we're going to show you, and some things are built into your programmatic systems, but some things you as a faculty member can do to make things more accessible. And that includes things like making color contrast appropriate so someone with color blindness can tell what you're trying to convey. Or maybe it's someone like myself with a hearing impairment, where if you're showing a video, there needs to be closed captions so I can figure out what's being said. The rule also applies to those or covers those with motor skill impairments, limited hand movement, etc. And those kinds of things we're not going to cover in this particular session because it's really more about how you build your website and the tools that you put in place so that someone could navigate with a keyboard. There are also things that people with cognitive impairments might have issues with how we build our course content. So we want to cover some of those areas too. All right. You want to think about what tools your institution has in place already. As Bob and I were talking with Lena just before this session began, it's so much easier if you start with accessible content from the upfront. So if you start with templates, for example, of your PowerPoint slides that are built in an accessible mode, all you then have to do is edit them, right? Rather than going back and remediating things. So the University of South Carolina has some digital accessibility tools, and Lena is showing you our live page. This is available for anyone. So even if you're not a USC employee, you can go to the University of South Carolina's digital accessibility toolbox and find some really cool cheat sheets on how to that will take you through step by step. No doubt your institution has something similar, but feel free to use whatever resources are out there. There are many institutions that have and are sharing a lot of information because we're all in this together, right? So I'm going to turn it over to Lena at this time, and she's going to give us a series of how-tos. So she's going to give you, I think we've got about 5 different examples of things that you can do right now to make your course content more accessible. And she'll give you a little overview of each. We can't reinvent the wheel at this point, but handy rule of thumb, start with accessible templates, yay. Number two, if you need to remediate, follow these easy steps. Lena?
All right. Thank you, Karen. All right. So we're going to start with heading styles. And the different examples that I'm going to share today are with original content that most of us use when building our different courses. So for example, we're going to go over styles, which is in Microsoft Word. So anytime you're using a Word document to create an assignment, share an example with students, this is an easy way to make sure that you're meeting those general accessibility guidelines. So the feature is titled Styles, and it's located in your Home section within Word. So we're going to look at a quick video of what it would look like when you're in your Microsoft Word platform and you're creating a document. So notice how the cursor went straight to heading 1. This is a style, and the text that goes there is going to be under heading 1. So when a student that needs the accessibility features, they will be able to listen to this document as well, not just view it. So heading 2, then click on heading 3, and you're able to put a third heading. So you don't want to put multiple heading 1s. Sometimes when people are getting used to styles or learning it, they go to heading 1 over and over again for every heading. So you don't want to do that. You want to have a different heading number each time. And when you're writing your general text, that's what's called normal, the normal text. And then you can check accessibility, and it'll show you to the right if there are any issues with your document. So because we've used each style feature, the accessibility report is clean and it shows that we don't have any issues with that document. Okay, so that's an example of what it looks like in Word. Okay, so the next demo is descriptive links. So I'm sure we're all familiar when you're entering in a website link for students to go to an article or a video, and it asks you to put the name or either just copy the link. A lot of times people would just copy the link and leave the entire link as the descriptive title. And that is not advantageous for students that need to use the accessibility features. So students that are listening to their screen record, what they're going to hear. So the tools that you use, it really can either enhance or take away from their learning experience. So this video, it has sound on it, and it is going to show, it's an example of a screen reader. So you'll see 3 lines here, and you're going to get to experience what the student that is using the screen reader will hear. Okay, so let's listen. For the first option,
Click this link for more information. Click https://www.fc.edu/about/offices_and_divisions/digital-accessibility/toolbox/index.php for more information. Click on the USC Digital Accessibility Toolbox page to learn more information about building accessible learning content.
okay. So Shannon, Deb, and Paula, which one of those options do you think is most ideal for a student listening to a screen reader? And you can put it in the chat, or you can just come off mute and say, let's see. The last one, yes. Thank you, Shannon. So the last example is what you would want, is an example of what you would want your students to hear when they're reading your links. So these two are often used, but this is what our goals should be when entering in descriptive links. Okay. Okay. So for our third demo, we have alternative text. So the concept of alternative text is to basically narrate what an image is showing. So if the student cannot see the image, what would you want them to know? What is it that you want them to capture from this image if they're not able to see it? And that's what you would want to put in your alternative text area. So we're going to watch a quick video on adding alternative text and what that might look like in your platform. So this is an example of adding alternative text on a PowerPoint presentation. Checking accessibility, it's letting us know that we have errors. So these accessibility checkers will guide you to images that do not have appropriate titles. View alternative text. And then you're able to enter in what the alternative text should be. Or you can mark it as decorative if the image does not have any educational value. Okay. So that's an example of what it would look like in PowerPoint. And I know a lot of us, we use different platforms. So you may be using Canva. It could be a PDF. And most of the platforms that we use to build content have some sort of accessibility checker built into it. So it's more about understanding what tools the platforms that you use have available and making a habit out of building your documents and building your assignments using these accessibility tools. Lastly, we're going to go over the color contrast for text and images. I'm pretty sure we've all experienced looking at a flyer or some sort of periodical and we can't really read it. You have to squint to try to read the letters, or you miss something completely because the colors were just blending in and you didn't notice it. So that's called our color contrast ratio. And we want to make sure it's strong so that everyone is able to see it, even if someone has a visual impairment. Okay, so we're going to click on this color contrast checker. And this is just an example of how you can check your color contrast if you need additional support. Or if your platform, your accessibility platform, doesn't cover color, you can use an external website to check it. Okay. All right. And next, I'm going to pass it back over to Karen.
Okay, thank you so much. And I will just point out that when it comes to color contrast, a 4.5 or higher is usually considered an acceptable ratio. And thank you so much. That color contrast tool is a very cool tool to help. And a lot of times, we want to use a pretty background on our slides or on our flyers. And then we want to use some nice color to make things look jazzier. But honestly, you can't beat good old black on white, right? It is the most obvious that will show up. And don't forget also that some people, depending on their visual impairments, cannot see certain colors, and red is the bad guy there, right? And so be very careful. Don't use just color to point out a highlight of that you're trying to bring home. Use bold or italic or underline, something in combination with color if you're really trying to drive home a point, because for some people, they can't tell the difference between a series of colors, maybe greens and reds or what have you. So we see that very often in pie charts, right? Or in graphs or what have you. Don't use color as a sole indicator. All right, so I do want to point out that each of the demos that Lena just gave you, you can review on the recording, or you can find some of the cheat sheets at the link that we're going to give you shortly. So to check your content, you will, in any kind of mode that you're in, whatever, regardless of the document, there's going to be an accessibility checker. And so for Word, you'll want to go to the upper ribbon, and under Review, you will click Review, and Check Accessibility comes up as your option. And when you check your accessibility, it will give you and I'm not sure if we've got it showing on this slide, but it will give you a pop-out to the right, and it will tell you what is wrong. For example, I guess it doesn't. Thank you for trying. It will tell you, for example, if your heading is not appropriate. So very often we think we can make a heading by just typing in the words. In this example, a paper that Lena and I wrote on getting ready for accessibility, right? Initially, I typed that in as just normal style, and I highlighted it in a bold and then centered it. Well, now it looks like a heading, but guess what? If you don't follow the steps that look like it, in making a technical heading, styles and that are so use those headings. That's one of the big areas that comes up. Another thing that comes up a lot, we find, is failure to put alternate text in images. And that's a big one that comes up, particularly in PowerPoint.
And Karen, you're muted.
Hi, guys. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, thank you. We're not sure what happened. Probably we had some kind of glitch
It-
on this side. We do apologize, but Lena will get the slides up, but I'll continue and just say alt text is one of the big problems that comes up. So if you use images in your presentations, which I think we all do, whether it's to convey messages and show learning content, or whether it is for the purpose of just making things more decorative, you've got to add alternate text, whether it's text to explain that image, as Lena demonstrated, or mark it decorative. If you just, like on our agenda where we put the little bullseye, that's marked as decorative. So follow your steps. So in PowerPoint, again, you would click Review and then click Accessibility. You can run the accessibility checker, and it will tell you each item that needs repair. So you want to use those checkers in any kind of document. Even Excel has a review and accessibility checking pane. So use those tools before you upload your material into your course forum. All right, so our next slide, please. The next slide is going to tell us a little bit about a tool that we have at the University of South Carolina that is available regardless of your learning forum. We use Blackboard, which has Ally built into it. And Ally is a tool, and there are other tools out there as well, that checks your forum, your course forum, for inaccessible content. So here if you happen to have Blackboard, you can go to the books and tools section, click on the accessibility report, and actually run a score. And of course, I'm going to show you one of our top ones, right? And so this particular professor worked really hard to make sure all her PowerPoint slides, all her documents, all her links were had alternate text, just everything just right. And so when she ran the accessibility report, it came up with 99. In this case, she has 58 images. All of them are, in fact, set up with alternate text. She had, I don't know how many documents, but they're all accessible. But the cool thing about Ally is it will also talk you through on how to remediate content. So she had one thing that did not quite fit the bill. If she hit start, it would tell her exactly what the item is, exactly where in her course forum that inaccessible item is, and it would tell her how to fix it. So if you use a learning management system to share information with your students or even with your colleagues or what have you, use the accessibility checker because it really is a great tool. In gearing up our faculty, Lena and I have found over here that this is a great teaching tool for faculty as well. Not only does it help identify where the problems are, it walks faculty through step by step how to fix the problem, and it's a learning tutorial in and of itself. So we truly recommend that you use that tool. And so it sounds like most of you who are participating on this session might be academic leaders who maybe are bringing the team on board. We spent a lot of time last semester with faculty workshops. We're now conducting, in the spring session, we're conducting staff workshops so that we're making sure everything that we send out, even to each other, whether in emails or what have you, that everything is accessible. It's again a culture shift, but we're getting everybody ready. So what you want to do to get your team ready for the accessibility deadline, as well as for ongoing best practices, is to locate and plan targeted training that is available through your institution. The great news is that many institutions, as well as other resources, are making webinars either low cost, thank you, Bob, or free, and are providing tutorials. So just do a web search and find where they are. We also recommend, if you're an instructional designer, to get with your community of practice and share tips and resources. We found that to be extremely helpful. And so if your colleague has created a tutorial or a learning module or a video to help spread the word on best practices, ask if you can use and integrate it yourself. And please also be willing to share, which we are willing to do, share our colleagues' cheat sheets and other resources. So if you take a moment and scan this QR code, Lena has prepared a list of our favorite resources to date that provide free resources for you and your team that you can share with them. This is open for anybody who has the QR code and the links. We're doing our best to keep them up to date because things do change a little bit, but on it you'll find the the link to our USC Digital Accessibility Toolbox, as well as a bunch of other things that Lena has prepared. So with that, I want to turn it over to Lena to tell you a little bit more about some of the other resources that are there.
All right. So on that list, you'll see that we do, well, once you scan the QR code, you'll see a guide for some of the different demos that I just went through. So there are other resources that show step-by-step guides, and there's also a peer-reviewed article shared as well on how implementing accessibility helps with student success. So it's just an array of different resources that are relevant to the accessibility rule that is coming out, well, that is already out that we have to do by April. And that resource list it's a lot of different things on there. I think you guys will enjoy.
So now let's go ahead and open it up for questions. If you post any questions that you have in the chat box, and since it sounds to me like we've got a pretty sophisticated group here, maybe you have some resources that you would like to share or some tips. And Brian already shared one tip. So let's give them a moment and let's see what all ideas, resources, questions, or tips that our audience might like to share. See, we've got a few replies under here. Okay. All right. Looking at a few LinkedIn learning resources when it comes to document accessibility. Okay. Very good. Very
LinkedIn Learning is
often,
great.
those who have business acumen or even businesses that service this are sometimes willing to share some. And there's a lot of good blog posts on LinkedIn as well, articles and professional sources. Excel requires accessible steps as well. So you can block off unused rows and columns, or you can enter a statement at the remaining rows that the remaining rows are blank. And that's a good one. And Excel, we haven't been hearing as much about accessibility in Excel, but that is certainly a tool that's widely used in industry, maybe not as much by all faculty, but the students that we're training to get out there. And then on the office side, I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about accessibility in Excel as we continue to train our staff side. So great point. Thank you, Lynn. Is anybody particularly proud of their institution's accessibility site and resources? Maybe you'd like to post a link and show that off and share it with us. Or maybe a concern. Maybe even though you guys are the experts, you're concerned about getting your colleagues or perhaps those who report to you up to speed. If you had success with getting your team up to speed, we'd love to hear what you've done and how long you've been working at it, and some of the tips that you might have for getting people excited about change. Last I checked, most humans aren't super excited about change, even when we know it's good change.
We have a hand raised.
Hey
Trey.
there. I have a
Okay.
question about reasonable accommodations versus what the law requires for everybody. Hold on. So for example, at a previous institution, it was health sciences and it was focused on or one of them was sonography that required students to use the to complete the sonograms. So given that they made the argument that, well, students have to see, so we don't need to make accommodations for them. And do y'all have any programs that have made the case that they don't need those requirements?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Interesting.
For example, nursing, you have to have meet certain physical requirements, or, even if you have a tech course and you're teaching CLD driving, a hearing impaired person can't drive a commercial truck, right? And
Mhm.
so the argument is, well, then we shouldn't have to meet these requirements. But the point is, if it's digitally shared content, and that's the trick, all right? If it's digitally shared content, then it must be accessible. So, not everything is digitally shared. So, for example, in face-to-face courses, if you have a sonogram and people need to use that, it would fall under the regular ADA rule, where if a student is physically present and they need an accommodation to be able to use it, then you'd have to accommodate them or give them some kind of alternate assignment. So really, if but if I show a video, which is a digitally shared thing, right, on how to do a sonogram, that will have to meet the rules. So I would have to make sure there's closed captions, or if it's a PowerPoint slide deck, I'd have to do alternate text. So it's a little bit different, but the baseline is digitally shared content. So if it is something that's on our website or something we're sharing in our learning forum, then it must be accessible. But tools, if we're teaching tools in the physical face-to-face atmosphere, then it would be driven by student requests under ADA. So did that answer your question or not?
Yeah, that was actually excellent because they use the excuse that the accreditors also require it. In other words, they require healthy vision. And so at the time, I was like, okay, because it was my initial interaction with the faculty regarding the requirement, letting them know all digital materials need to be. So I never came back to that. It was someone else. But anyway, I appreciate it. That
And
makes a
I
lot of
have a
Yeah,
sense.
I have a
it's
comment on
it's
that also. And there may be, I'm pretty sure there, even if it's not the actual student that's working on the sonogram, there's a lot of communication in the medical field. So I'm sure there are aspects of that industry where those students are going to have to communicate, whether it's a report or it's patient records, where those items still need to be accessible. So it's still, to me, my thought is that it still should be something that they would want to do um, within within that industry. I'm pretty sure that it has accessibility is going to be needed at some point in the communication trail.
And
So,
you'll want, that's a great point, Lena. And you'll want to also check with your institution, because I know that the question has come up. Well, what if I'm a blind person and I want to enroll in the nursing program, but in order to be an RN, let's say, for example, I would have to have good vision. Well, your institution probably has in place a policy that would not exclude that person from the program, but would require some honest conversations about their job prospects upon graduation. But maybe they just want to learn. And for that reason, yes, any videos that you put up in the program would have to have, sound, audio for that person and what have you. So we're making everything that's digitally shared accessible upfront. All right, we've got Shannon has mentioned that we're trying to get up to speed on the video descriptions that will be required, depending on the size of the institution. What others are finding, yeah. And so the video descriptions, you have to have the closed captioning, but if you use a hosting service like, let's say, YouTube, you have to not only make sure that they're captioned, but you have to make sure your captioning is correct. YouTube is a lot better than it used to be, but editing of captions has to happen also. We happen to use the Panopto tool, which will do captioning, but faculty do have to go back and make sure the captions are appropriate. So thank you for pointing that out. UAGC has an accessibility specialist. Yay, on the course revision team. Ooh, yay for you. For every development, it is a lot of work, but it is so important. And what we found is that even if you're fortunate enough to have a team of instructional designers, they're more knowledgeable than your average faculty member or administrator in accessibility, but accessibility experts are in hot demand. So, Lynn, I'm so glad you have one. Keep them happy, or someone will steal him or her. No, I'm only kidding. But it's a wonderful thing to have, and it's again so important, and it's a learning process for all of us. Lynn is adding that videos require descriptive transcript if it's anything other than a talking head, and captions have to be 100% accurate with punctuation, capitalization, and captions need to match the words being spoken on the video. Absolutely. So that's very important. Thank you for sharing that additional explanation. Yes, very good. Anything else? Or maybe you are the expert, Lynn. It sounds like it. Any other questions, comments, or things to share? We have a few minutes left, but I don't think we're going to hold you hostage if there isn't anything. Well, we hope that this has been a nice overview of the things that we found to be the top issues with getting our faculty up to speed. We appreciate you all being with us, even though I feel like, Lynn, I think you're being humble, but experience is the best teacher. And I think that we're all going through this together, and everybody's getting a little bit better every day. I feel that way. And so until this just becomes the culture, which I anticipate is going to be true sooner than later, I love the fact that people in education, particularly higher ed, want to help each other so much so that we're all successful in doing what's right for our students. So thank you all so much for all that you do and continuing with this effort. And Bob, thank you for inviting Lena and me to come and chat with this group. We have thoroughly enjoyed it, and we wish everyone all the best. And be sure to check out Lena's resource page. We hope that it keeps the conversation going. And if you see anything that you think we should add, we will do it. Just send us an email. And we'll put our email addresses in the chat box.
Right? That resource page is really terrific.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much.
both. Thank you for taking the time to do this. It's been very helpful and useful.
Well, I'm so glad. And thank you so much to our great group here, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes, thanks.